Yay, all right, sorry about that, y'all. Okay, so my name is Spoonemore, and I'm going to be talking about a couple of different things today. So first, how I learned to code, and then second, just kind of my experiences of running a startup on the side of having a full-time job too. So I'm about 6 months into it, and I'll be talking about just what I've learned through that, how we do it, and just things of that extent. So to start off, this is me and my family here, and this was our backyard in 2015. Now, and this is a few weeks ago. So through the process of building this, there were a lot of things that were frustrating. I had to memorize a lot about vegetables and what vegetables can go next to each other, what type of bugs attach each vegetable, what to do to those bugs, like all of these things I had to memorize and keep track of, and I was constantly carrying around books in my garden, trying to keep track of all this information, and I wanted to build an app to make it easier. So that's kind of where that's where all of this led into, was I wanted to make an app to make gardening easier. So you can download the app if you'd like to follow along. I'll be showing some of the stuff. Actually, I'll go ahead and just show the app now so you can get an understanding of what we built, and then I'll go into talking about the rest of it. So hopefully this works. Great, all right. So this is the app here. You can choose whatever vegetable you want to grow. You can filter the list, so I can filter down to warm season and choose beans, for example. Once I choose beans, it's going to give me exact dates for when I can plant based on the nearest weather station. So we pull the weather station closest to the user, we get a list of dates that it's most likely to freeze, and then we use that to calculate when you should plant each vegetable according to what type of temperature that vegetable likes. So we also give you other information about how to grow each vegetable going through, just kind of giving you everything you need to know about that vegetable. And then on the companions tab, we show the vegetables that grow well next to each other vegetable, as well as the things that do not grow well next to each thing, and also the pests that attack them. And then you can tap on a pest to view about how to handle that pest, what to do about it, and so on and so forth. So this is the app that we built. And what I want to talk about now is just everything related to how I learned to code and everything else. So that's where this starts. So for me, it took getting inspired. In 2016, my wife and I had lost a child earlier in the year, and I was very stressed out. I have a lot of issues with anxiety and depression. That's why I started gardening to begin with. And the election was going on, all this stuff was going on, and basically I took all of that energy from there and put it into Seed to Spoon. So this was what I had to do with all that, because it was eating me alive. It was trying to keep up with the news, and I was worried about the direction the world's going in, and I have 4 young children, and I worry about the world they're gonna grow up in, and all of that energy I had to put into somewhere, because it was just eating me alive. And basically all of that went into this, and this is where I started learning how to code. So I was out to lunch with my team. This is an old picture. This is around the time that we went out to lunch, and I was in QA at the time. I've done a couple of different things throughout my career. I was in QA for a large part of it. Then I was in product management for a while. I was in charge of the mobile apps at Alamode for a number of years. And then when I left there, I went back to QA because I didn't want to have the stress of running that again. And QA is something I've always been good at. And that's kind of where I went back into. And I was doing test automation at the time, where I was writing protractor tests that were testing our websites, loading up every site every 5 minutes, making sure everything loads and doing things like that. And I was out to lunch, and Luke, the guy in the striped shirt here, has always been someone throughout my life that has helped motivate me. He inspired me to run a marathon 10 years ago or whenever it was. He's always been someone like that for me. And he told me, look, Del, I think you can do it. You've written these protractor tests. It's not that much more difficult to learn how to code and to build an app. And that was what I needed. And that was the day that I started building Seed to Spoon. So we came back from that lunch, and Chase, the guy here in the middle, and Justin on the end here, came over to my desk, and they set me up with Ionic. So a little more backstory. During the day, we build Angular sites. So for me, the natural evolution was to jump into Ionic, because I already have all these people around me that are very good at Angular. I knew it'd be a way for me to dive in and learn. So I started with Ionic, and we started coding they set me up with, they got an app installed, just the basic Ionic start, that builds out the scaffolded. I don't know how familiar you guys are with Ionic. So there's a command line you can run where it builds out a scaffolded app that's just some tabs and some text and basic stuff like that. And they showed me how to set up an object, how to set up a for loop, and then showed me that, how everything is structured in the app. And from there, I was off and running. I had no idea that you could build an app with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I thought in order to build an app, I was going to have to learn either Objective-C or Java or whatever, I would have to learn to build a native app. I had no idea about this whole hybrid landscape. So anyway, that's kind of where this goes into of how I learned to code, and I want to talk briefly about that. So mentors are a critical step, at least for me, for learning how to code. I had to have them. These were my mentors here, and what they're going to do is they're going to help guide your learning path. So in the beginning, there was all these things I had to learn. I didn't know what to spend time on learning and what was a waste of time. And having them around really helps because they're going to help guide and help you understand what you need to actually be learning. They're also going to be there to answer questions. I had so many questions. I still have questions, and they're there to answer those for me, to review my code, and then to encourage me, like Luke did in the beginning, where he gave me that confidence boost to get started. So the next step from there, once I had the mentor in place, once I learned what I needed to learn, I knew that I needed to go back to the foundational principles because I had taken some programming or some programming courses in college, but it didn't. I'm not going to go into too much into that, but it just didn't stick with me, and I knew that I needed to go back to that. So as far as the foundational principles were concerned, I leaned on previous experience. One, I had a lot of HTML and CSS experience that I had no idea could even be used in mobile development, so I had a lot of experience there. But then for the JavaScript side of it, I turned to Code School and Pluralsight and YouTube, basically, and I just binged on all three of those sources. So before I started coding, I spent a lot of time playing video games, watching TV, doing things like that, and basically all of that time I started putting into this. And this is not to say that those things are bad at all. It's just for me, where I was in life, with 4 kids and wanting to do something, I just didn't feel like I had time for that anymore. And if I wanted to build an app, it was going to take time from somewhere. I have a full-time job, so that's where I pulled from. So I basically stopped watching all TV. I sold my Xbox. I was pretty addicted to video games before too, so I have a hard time doing anything halfway. Either I don't do video games or I'm in a Madden league where I scout the person's game that I'm about to play and chart all their plays and develop an algorithm for what their play calling is, and I just can't do anything halfway. So I had to throw that away basically. And so once I got the foundational principles where I felt like I was pretty solid with those, I turned my attention to learning Angular and Ionic. So I dove into the framework. And the framework homepage is really good. The Angular and the Ionic homepages are both really good. They have really great docs that walk you through things. Again, Pluralsight has been a great resource for me. I've learned a lot from there, and YouTube as well. Here's some other ones that I mentioned. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but React Native and Xamarin are also great options for hybrid. I've done a little bit with both. I'm going to be pivoting my app into one of these two over the next few months. So I'm not exactly sure which one yet, but that's where I am on things. So I want to talk about some other ways to learn, because you can't always be staring at a computer. I guess you can, but it makes me go insane, so I can't do that. But podcasts help fill that non-screen time. So when I'm out in the garden, I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts. Syntax is my favorite one. And they're putting out a lot of content right now, so it's hard enough just to keep up with that one. But when I do catch up on their stuff, I'll move over to Dev Chat. But there's a lot of podcasts out there that are great. So whatever your interest is, find a podcast that's about that, and I guarantee there's a good one. Also, what I did was on Twitter, I started following all the people that I was learning from. So all these Pluralsight authors and YouTube people that are making YouTube videos and things like that. I started following them on Twitter and then reading what they're writing about and reading what they're following and what they're interested in. And from that, it really helps. I mentioned earlier the mentor helps you know what you need to know. Well, this helps too, because once you're following this community and I see that maybe John Pop is working on something new or he's trying something new, then or there's some new framework that, and there's endless scenarios, but this really helps guide you because you understand and you know what else, everyone else is excited about. And this landscape is so huge that for me, I need that because I'll get off the rails going down every path if I'm allowed to. I also want to mention Techlahoma. I've learned a lot from this organization. I didn't go through the free code camp, but we have someone on our team that did, and he learned a lot from there. He really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot of other people through here, so this is a great way to learn and to meet people as well. So I want to talk about some lessons learned from learning. So these are kind of the lessons I learned from learning how to code. And the first one is a lot has changed from 10 years ago. It's a lot easier. When I tried to learn how to code 10 years ago, if I wanted to build an example app that had a grid in it, I had to go build that grid, I had to build every piece of it. These frameworks make it really easy to get started, especially for a beginner, because you don't have to learn how to build these components. You just stick the component in and it generally works. You know, you maybe have some things you have to do to get it working, but it's just a lot easier to get going than it was 10 years ago. Also, you can't learn this stuff overnight. I'm not a very patient person by nature. If I can't figure something out, I get frustrated, I start to have negative thoughts, those start to bubble up. It's not a good thing. And what I've had to learn is to have patience. So when I get stuck on something, if there's something I can't figure out, just walk away from it and go do something that is completely of the opposite mind. So for me, that's going out in the garden and watering or washing dishes or just something I don't have to think about, something I just do mindlessly. And every single time while I'm doing that, an idea will just come to me and I'll sprint into my office. I work from home for the most time. So I'll sprint in my office and then it's there. So it's learning to trust that process was huge for me because in the beginning, I didn't. And if I couldn't figure something out, I would get frustrated, but you've got to learn just to walk away and to come back to it. And on a related note, don't get stuck. If you're stuck on a problem for a day, reach out to someone. It doesn't make you any less of a developer. It doesn't mean anything less of you. I spent a lot of time in the beginning just being stuck on something for 2 days, and then I go talk to someone at work and the answer's right there. And it would have saved me so much time and frustration. On the other hand, you don't want to ask about everything. I mean, there's a balance there, and that's how I learn is through being stuck, but don't be so hard on yourself. Also, don't obsess over picking a language and a framework. When I first started learning, I spent so much time thinking about should be this, should be that, and it was a lot of wasted time. I should have just started moving. And then what I've learned now is anything I learn on one framework or language generally helps me in that other area too. This is all pretty similar stuff. And then I'm gonna mention this again. Prior experiences were way more valuable than I realized. I had a whole childhood of HTML and CSS that I had just discounted because I hadn't done it professionally. Well, those same skills, and also a lot of, when I was a kid, I was, again, the video game thing, I was really into some computer games, and it's really what got me into computers, really, was learning how to manipulate those games and how to make them work differently. Well, a lot of that stuff was writing batch files to do things and stuff. So all of those skills that I had just discounted have been super valuable to me now. So this leads me into the next part, which is code the change you want to see in the world, because I get asked a lot some very specific questions about how you find time to build a startup on the side, those type of things. But also more importantly, I want to stick on this slide for just a second, because this really is the idea that got me to learn how to code and to build the app, was that instead of complaining about the things I saw in the world or being frustrated or worrying about the things in the world, I took all of that energy and put it into coding a change for that problem. Whereas in the past, I spent a lot of time just being angry and frustrated at those things, but now I can take that energy and put it into here. And that has had it's difficult for me to describe how much of a change that has had in my life, that I have an outlet for that now. And in the process, I get to feel like I get to do good through that outlet too. I get to help people. We get emails every day from people all across the world to say that they tried growing food, they couldn't, they downloaded this app, and now they're able to grow food for their family. And that really makes you feel good, and it empowers you. And that's really what I want to call, that's the point of me doing this talking. I want to inspire people to code the change that you want to see in the world, right? Because as developers, we have this opportunity that is really unrealized in human history, where at the click of a button, you can be in front of the entire world, billions of people, with no organization you have to go through. I mean, I guess you got to go through Apple, but whatever. There's not news organizations and all these things. In the past, if you want to get an idea out in front of people, it took a lot of money and a lot of influence to get that out. Well, now, everyone in this room, in 6 months, I learned how to code and put this app out, and 50,000 people have downloaded it. That's just the power of the world we live in today, that opportunity is out there. So, when and how, you may be asking, because that's something that I get asked a lot. Early morning for me. That's when I get the majority of my stuff done. I get up 4 or 5 in the morning most times. I don't do that every morning, but at least 3 or 4 times a week I get up that early. It's natural for me now. I just wake up naturally that early, and I can't go back to sleep. But that is my golden time to get all of my work done, because from 4 to 7:30 or 8, the house is quiet. I have 4 kids, remember, so like it's not normally quiet. I don't feel like I'm sacrificing time with my wife at all. Like it is just my time where I can just flourish. I have no outside worries. My mind is fresh from waking up. So that's when I get the bulk of my work done. Now I had to make some changes because I used to stay up late. Now I don't. I went to bed at 7:45 last night. It was because I've had 3 of those mornings this week where I got up at 4:30, 3 times this week. But that's the whole thing is I've wasted a lot of time in my life in those late night hours, and I've just learned to try to avoid them. Another thing I want to mention is the TV video game at night. There was a lot of time where when I did feel stressed out, I would, the kids would go to bed, my wife would go to bed, and then I would get up and start playing video games. Well, before I know it, it's 3 a.m. and I'm still on there, angry at whoever shot me in Call of Duty or whatever's going on. And there really wasn't much productive coming out of that time. So now I don't do this very often, and I don't encourage anyone to do this very often, but there are just some nights where I cannot go to sleep. No matter what I do or what I try, and even if I try meditation or all the things I try and do, I just can't. I just got to do something. So on those nights, I do something related to Seed to Spoon, whether it's coding or marketing, or I'll get to all the other non-coding stuff that comes with this too, because that is a large thing that I didn't really realize when I started this. I guess I realized, I just didn't think about it. Involve your family. So on our app, my wife learned HTML and JSON. She now manages our database. Our database is in JSON. It's a NoSQL. So our database of vegetables and pests, she manages that. She's constantly researching new stuff and adding it to it. She likes doing that more than her real job now. My kids, I taught them how to use Adobe Spark Post, and my 9 and 7-year-old designed the graphics at the top of every single vegetable. So if you go into peppers and you look at the top, every single one of those were designed by my 9 and 7-year-olds. I taught them how to do one, and then they went through and did all of them. So they're also my QA team. Whenever we have a new build, I give them a couple iPads, go through and make sure every button works, things like that. So that's a way to really help, because now instead of it being this thing that daddy does on the side, and they, it's now something they're involved in and they get excited about, and they take it to school and they show their friends, look what I made. And hopefully it'll help bring them into my world, because that's what I would like for them, is for them to have a career like this, right? So this is just a way to help bring them into that. Thanks for turning that off, by the way. I didn't realize that was bugging me so much. The UI frameworks really help with design. I want to mention that too. Now, I don't know what you guys have on the native side. I haven't gone into that to see what type of frameworks there are, but design is not my strong suit. But I'm really good at knowing what looks good and then replicating that. Well, these frameworks make that process really easy. There's an app that Ionic has that you can pull up on a phone, every different type of component, right? So I could go through and I knew I wanted to show a vegetable, but I didn't know how I wanted to show the data. So I started going through and looking at other examples of how other data is shown, and then that gets the wheels turning. So that's how I was able to do design on here, was just by finding components that I like and then making my data work within that structure. I want to talk about how we grew, because this is something we get a lot of questions about as well. And the App Store, I think, overall has been the largest contributor to growth, which is really encouraging for me, because I thought I was going to have to do, and I did do all this side stuff, but the App Store, out of everything, has been our largest source of growth. We get about 3,000 downloads a week right now, and that's not from me doing anything to recruit those. That's just coming straight from the App Store, from people searching for gardening, or if you search for growing food, it's #1 right now. This is just strictly from users helping prop it up, which leads into some of the next points. So spend time on the graphics and the text. It is really important. You've really got to put your marketing hat on, find a friend that's good at this, because it's so important when people are searching the App Store, that text they see and those screenshots they see, that's going to decide whether or not they download the app. Your app could be amazing, but if you don't do a good job of selling it there, they're not even going to download it. That's just the culture we live in now. So I've spent a lot of time on that text and those graphics, just trying to make those as to the point as I can. Reviews matter a lot too. So this is something we've learned firsthand, because we put out an update a few months ago where we started asking for reviews on the 5th open, I believe. And we got a lot of reviews from that, and then that's one of the things that made our app jump up in the store was around that same time from the reviews. So it's a double-edged sword, because I hate asking for reviews. And I don't like getting asked, but that's why I made it ask on the 5th open, right? I figure if someone opens it 5 times, then hopefully by then they've at least have a favorable opinion, but there's a lot of different ways to do that. Social media is another way we grew as well. We have a Facebook page and a YouTube channel and all of that, where I did a lot of gardening videos. So videos of me out in my garden showing how to do things. It definitely works, but I don't know if I'd recommend it because I've spent the past 6 months of my life doing nothing but shooting gardening videos and coding about gardening, and I lost like pretty much my whole social life, and I lost myself to this for the past 6 months. So and I don't have an answer on this side. This is like everything else. I feel like I told you what worked. I'm still trying to figure out what works on this front because I got a little too excited, right? Like I got too invested in it, and so I don't know if I want to recommend the social media side of it, and I don't know if you need it because, like I said, we have more growth through the App Store just generically through there than we have had through all the time that I've spent on social media and everything. We've also done a lot of local events. There's a couple home and garden shows here in the city. I went to their website, I filled out a form saying I'd like to speak, and that's all it took, and they reached out. And so we did a lot of things like that where we did some kids festivals. We did gardening festivals where people could bring their kids and they get a free plant and all sorts of stuff like that and activities for kids. Just trying to get engagement in the community. So, which I kind of glossed over the building community part of social media, but that is important, and that is the one side of it I like about the social media part of it was on our page we have a community, so there's a group now on our From Seed to Spoon Facebook page where people can go and they can ask gardening questions, and I've recruited people from all across the country to answer them there. So that's a cool part of it. Like I'm glad I built that part of it, but you've got to decouple yourself from that because if you are in the world of managing, at least me, I wasn't able to do, of manage a social media brand and code and have a full-time job, like it's just way too much. When I started Seed to Spoon, I was only doing gardening videos before I started coding. And I could keep that pace up, but I can't do that and coding and. So it's just, you've got to really be purposeful with your time and don't let it suck too much of your time away. On this point, I want to mention the book Essentialism. It helped me a lot in deciding what you should spend your time on and what you shouldn't. So I want to talk about some of the tools I use because it's something I get asked a lot about as well. Screenshot Pro is an app that I use to take screen recordings or screenshots from an iPhone and wrap it in a device wrapper that looks really nice. So like if you go on my website, I don't have an example right here, but it has like a marketing, graphic scrolling that shows like the different screens in the app. Well, that's wrapped inside of a device wrapper. That app, it's an iPhone and iPad app. It also does videos really well too. So it's a really easy way to get videos like that out. I'm sure there's other solutions on a Mac or whatever, but if you're mobile only, that's a way. Adobe Spark Post, I mentioned that earlier. That's a way that I make a lot of my graphics because again, I'm not a great designer, but I know what looks good. So with Adobe Spark Post, they have templates that will guide you through different ways of building something, and then you can kind of choose what you like and go from there. I don't know how you say this, but colors, or how do you say that? When anytime I'm building something new, I use this because it helps me make sure I don't have colors that clash. I'm also not good at knowing like when colors clash, but this tool makes it really nice because you can put in, like for example, I uploaded my logo to this site and it built a whole color scheme around that logo. And I could just keep clicking next until I, through the different schemes until I found the one I liked, and that's how I built my color scheme. Filmora is a video editing app that I use for a lot of our promotional things and whatnot. It's obviously cheaper than the Adobe products and a lot easier to use. Buffer, this is a really important, out of all the tools I mentioned, this is probably the one that if you're going to run a brand on the side, this is the one that I recommend the most because this automates a lot of things for you. So what Buffer lets you do is schedule, so case in point, I can go out in my garden, take 15 to 20 photos of different things, write like a little paragraph that goes into each one, throw them into Buffer. And what Buffer does is it automatically posts those for me at given intervals to different networks. So on Facebook, it goes twice a day. On Twitter, it goes 8 times a day. On Instagram, it's like, there's all these different metrics, and they've done the research on figuring out what the right times to post and all that is, and it does it automatically for you. So what that allows me to do is, go on a weekend, take a couple hours, write all of our marketing stuff for the next 2 weeks, and then go back to coding. Because when I have to manage that on a daily basis, that will drive you insane. It did drive me insane. We're trying to manage that stuff. So Buffer also, this kind of leads in the next one. Revive Old Post. I'm moving from Revive Old Post into Buffer for everything. But what Revive Old Post does, it's a WordPress extension, and my site's in WordPress. It grabs any post that I deem with a repost tag and puts those into circulation too. So I'm not always on the hook for creating new content. I can also keep that old content flowing. So, and then I change that depending on what's going on. So in the spring, I'll have a bunch of stuff about growing broccoli and cabbage and spinach and all the cool season stuff. And then in the summer, I'll go through and change my tags to be the summer stuff. I would like to get it to a more automated, elegant solution, but this is, that was a huge change that really helped with not feeling like I had to think about, because that's really the challenge, is how to run something like this without feeling like you have to think about it all the time. And those are the tools that let you do that. So lastly, I want to talk about some lessons learned. So these are just kind of from the past 6 months of running a side project and having a full-time job, and lessons I've learned from it. So the first one is don't sprint a marathon. And what I mean by this is when we first launched, I had no idea what to expect. We released, and then within about a month, like, it just started taking off like crazy. And I tried to sprint with that. That was not the right plan. I should have remembered this is a marathon. I need to keep on my goals. And I've run a marathon and I've done this before, so this is not a good idea, because you use all your energy up front, and I'm still trying to kind of recoup from that and get back into a more sustainable way of running a side project and having a full-time job and all of that. So another thing is the developer marketer pendulum is the best way I could describe this. And this came from, I had a conversation with someone that I really respect that's built a software company and has had to go through this. And his advice was to not think of it though, because the question I asked him is, how do you be a developer and a marketer in the same day? Or just in the same week even? Because they're so different ways of thinking. And I have a really hard time going between those two different mindsets. As a developer, I'm thinking like analytically through problems and whatnot. And then as a marketer, you've got to step back and think about the whole other side. And the advice he gave me that I try and remember is to not think of it as two different things, but as two sides of the same coin. So as a developer, you should be trying to solve those problems that marketing brain identified. And then as a marketer, you should be trying to promote the things you just solved on the developer side, right? I mean, that's ultimately why I built the app to begin with, because I wanted to make gardening easier. I wanted to not have to remember all these vegetables and pests. Well, my first round of marketing didn't say that. It said, like, it was more of the developer talk of, oh, it has this, this, and this. It wasn't, this is the problem you're trying to solve, right? So if you want to know more about that whole idea, the book Start With Why has really helped me out a lot. Because in every marketing thing I do, I start with okay, why did I build this? When I was developing this, why, right? And then use that as my marketing language. So reach out for help, because it's going to come to a point to where it outgrows you, and you've got to reach out for help. And you'll know who. I mean, when we launched this, it was just me, my wife, and my kids, and now it's grown to having. I have a friend that's a developer that works with me. We have other people that pitch in and help. People will be willing to help, be open to it, because I'm not very good at reaching out, and I've had to learn that. It doesn't have to be a business. This is something that I'm still trying to learn, because when you release a side project and it takes off like that, and so let me talk about the money side of it a little bit. We have Amazon ads throughout the app. Those Amazon ads, we get 8% of each purchase. Of that purchase and every other purchase the next 24 hours while they have that tab open. When we launched, that was nothing. Within a month, it became $400 a month. Well, it's really easy to do the math on that and see, okay, if we keep scaling, then that's going to keep growing. Well, then also, it's really easy to do the math of if I take this 8% and turn it into 30% through direct integrations, that's also a lot better too. So two of the companies that we sell the most products of, Smart Pots, they're a company based out of here in Oklahoma City that sell these fabric raised beds. So they make gardening really easy in like apartments or just anywhere, because it's not like a permanent thing you have to build. And then Seeding Square, this template that makes like seed spacing really easy. Those two products, I've reached out to them, and I have agreements with them to sell their products directly through the app. But the problem is, in order to do that, and I actually have, through Stripe, I have it set to where I can sell something through the app. But in order to sell something, you have to keep track of an order and a customer and all this other stuff too, and handle returns and have this whole infrastructure for it. And I started going down the path of building that 2 or 3 months ago, and that's what burned me out, was because now I took the side project that was trying to make gardening software, to make gardening easier, because I love gardening, right? And now I'm spending my day job making accounting software, and then my night job basically making accounting software, and I lost the passion for it, right? So it doesn't have to be a business right now. But what I should have done, and what I've done since, as I've refocused back to, I want to make gardening software. I want to spend my time writing gardening software. So I'm going back into that. So even knowing that there's all this money being left out there that I could capitalize on, it doesn't matter, because that's not where happiness is, right? Like for me at least. And I'm focusing now back on the software side of it. Like I want to build, like right now, all the app does is show you information. My goal of what I want to do with this is have an app that lets you choose what you want to grow, go through a list of vegetables, and then from then it gives you push notifications for the day you need to plant it, and when you need to water based on how much it's rained where you are. Like this whole thing that guides you through everything you need to do. Like that's what I want to build. So I'm going back to that and spending my time on that and my energy on that. So that's my advice that's what I mean with this. It doesn't have to be a business right now. I'm very blessed in that I love the job I have now. I get to work remotely, pretty much. I get to set my schedule. Like my teammates are my best friends. Like, it's okay to just embrace that. That it doesn't have to be a business. So I would like for this to be a business one day. I mean, that's my goal, but the one day thing is the thing I got to keep in mind. And something else related to this that I want to mention is there are some great programs around here. One that's pretty new that's actually sponsored by the Thunder and by, I think Techlahoma might be involved. I know Bid First Bank and Google are, but it's called Stitch Crew. And it's geared towards helping startups based in Oklahoma that are focused on education, healthcare, agriculture, core things like that, right? So there's, and I'm supposed to be talking with them soon. Like these are the type of things I'm trying to get plugged into now, instead of trying to roll this all on my own, right? That's just not a sustainable way to go. So that's all I have on the lessons learned. I went a little longer than I planned to on that. I want to answer questions. I know I've covered a lot of different things. Do you guys have any questions about anything that I've gone over that maybe you want to go in more detail on? Or yes? So I started learning the code last July, and then from July, I spent July and August kind of just building a bunch of Angular tutorial apps, and then I started building the app in I guess it was really the end of August when I started building the actual app, and then we released in January. Any other questions? Well, here's my information about how to download the app. And then also on our website, I did a lot of writing. I'm starting to do more of this. So here, I did a lot of writing about how we built our garden. So, and then also about anxiety and depression. I do a lot of, this is the reason why I started all this, was to fight anxiety and depression. So I'm pretty open about this stuff. I do a lot of writing about it. So if it's something you guys deal with, hopefully this helps. That's why I write about it, because I started writing about it and people told me that it helped them. So I try and be open about this stuff, because, yes?
Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just wondering, you said most of your growth is in the App Store. Is that the surface in the App Store, or are you getting click-throughs from here?
There's not much coming from here, really. And because here's the racket. So we had a lot of growth coming from Facebook, right? But that was when I paid Facebook. Because the problem is you set up a Facebook page and you pay $20 to put an ad out. And that ad gets in front of, say, just a totally random number, say 2,000 people, okay? Now you convert those people into followers, right? So your page goes from 0 followers, and I think now we're at like 4,000 or something like that. But what happens is now, to reach those 4,000 people, you have to pay to reach your own audience, because you put out a post and only like 8 to 12% of people see that post, unless you boost it. So now I'm having to pay Facebook to show my own content to my own followers. So that's one of the reasons why I've pivoted hardcore away from Facebook. And I'm now trying to get people into the app. So, push notifications, like live streams from within the app, answer garden questions, things like that, to pull people back into the app, because that really bugged me. I spent a lot of time building up this Facebook audience, and then now I've got to pay to talk to them, and it's just, but that's their game. I get it now. So some of these other platforms, YouTube's a little better about it, but the problem with YouTube is their algorithms will really punish you if you take a couple weeks off. So, we had, one of my gardening videos got to 50,000 views, and we had a bunch of, everything after that for 2 weeks was post it, and that day it's 1,000 views and a ton of traffic coming in, right? Sorry. And then I take a week off and come back, and it's right back to, because, and I did research on it, and that's what YouTube wants. They want, and I don't want to be a slave to that, because it almost ruined gardening for me. It really did, where I started gardening because I want to get out and get relief from anxiety and depression. And now every time I walk out there and I start doing something, oh, this could be a video, and I set up my tripod, and then it's try and shoot a video, and it's 5 takes before it has something I don't hate, and And then you got to like edit that video. Even like a 2-minute video takes 15 to 30 minutes of editing, and then you post that video, and then there's like all these comments that come. And it's just this whole world that I don't want to recommend people to go into it. But it does help. And if you create content related to what you're doing, it will definitely help growth. And I think there's a way to do it the right way that I'm still trying to find. I just haven't found it yet. So, yes. Mm-hmm. So it's a free app, but throughout the app we have links. So if you go to Peppers and you scroll down far enough, you're going to see an ad for this big bag bed, which is the smart pot thing I mentioned earlier, but also things related to that. So plant stakes, seeds, a book, row covers for insect issues, a motion activated sprinkler to help with pests, like things like that. If someone clicks on that link, I get 8% of that purchase and every other purchase on Amazon for the next 24 hours. So that wasn't really a revenue model when we released. It was more of a compensation model because I didn't think anything would come of it. It was just, we can, so we might as well, right? And we had the whole app built, and then I learned about this Amazon stuff. I kind of just threw it in. And then, overnight, it seemed that became, $400 a month. And that was like, I could have doubled down on that idea, right? I could have built an online nursery, basically, which is what I would have started doing. And I still may do that. But I don't want to build that by myself without an attorney. Because that was the thing, too, is around the time that I was building that was when the data protection regulations started hitting, like the GDPR became a big thing, right? So I had to go through the nightmare of that. And then that was really like, oh my gosh, if it was this much of a nightmare just to get someone to come to my website without getting sued, then just imagine when I start selling to them. And that was the thing that kind of, and so I still want to build that. I just don't want to do it by myself, and I don't want to do it without attorneys and all these things. Because I was up reading law, 2 or 3 of that night. That nighttime when I can't sleep was like reading through different law things, and I do not want to do that. So that's why I'm pivoting back to just focusing on the software side of it and building out better gardening software. And I may charge for that. That may be like a monthly thing. So I'm going to keep the version of the app that I have now free forever. Because I wanted to make a difference in the world. That's why I built this app, because I wanted to make growing food easier. Because when I learned how to do it or started growing food, there's a lot to learn. And it was overwhelming, and I wanted to make it easier. I wanted that to be my mark on the world, right? I'm happy with what the app does now, and I feel like if we build additional stuff into it, I feel comfortable charging monthly for that, because I feel like anything we're doing beyond that, it's going to require Azure services and all these things I've got to pay for anyway. Another thing we're working on, there's just so much amazing technology out there that makes it really easy to build cool things. Azure has a really cool service where you can take a picture of something, send it up to their servers, and then through machine learning, they send you back what it is. So we're doing pest recognition, or you can take a picture of a pest and it tells you what it is. And it's super simple to build this stuff because you're not having to build it your own. That's what I mentioned about being easier than 10 years ago. All these frameworks and tools and libraries are just out there, and it just takes a little bit of digging in to learn how to use them. They got me off track a little bit, but yeah. So, so there may be the side for the chance for the monthly stream to be. I don't know. I'm not hanging my hat on it, and I'm not getting my hopes up on it. It's I pay my bills for my day job, and this is what I do on the side. Maybe that'll flip some point, but it'll ruin it if I try and force it now. And that was what happened, a few months ago, because I'm just now getting to the point where I'm excited to do this again, and I love doing it again. I don't want to ruin that, but it took 2 months of going out in my garden by myself without involving anyone else in the process to kind of get back to there, to remember. It took running into problems in the garden again, to re-energize myself in that. Any other questions? Cool. Well, thank you guys for having me today. I really appreciate it.